So today we finished till the end of Daled, the fourth chapter. I'm going to skip 5, 6, and 7 because that's the more complicated explanations. And I'm going to go to Ches, to chapter 8. Good morning. Here you can take this book. We're going to use this.
Wow.
Good morning. So those who have the book, it's on page 60. Good morning. Okay, so it's Ois Ches. If you're using the book that we gave out in class before, it's page number 6. If you have the new book, which is called Lessons in Heichaltzu, then it's page 60. V'hinei. Before I continue with the Mamar, I just want to say a few words about today. Even though Rabbi Patil will have Farbrengen later and talk about today's day, which is Iyar, the second day of Iyar. And in terms of the spheres, it's Tiferes, Shevet Tiferes. The reason why it's such a significant day is because it's the birthday of the Rebbe Marash, which is the 4th Rebbe of Chabad. And we know that all the Rebbes of Chabad are one continuation, one chain, one golden chain. Each Rebbe continued the teachings of the Rebbe that preceded him and only developed it further and spread it further. But whoever is familiar with Chabad teaching know that it's all one consistent long chain. But at the same time, every Rebbe naturally in his generation had something unique that he added and that was unique about his generation. We're not capable of understanding what is the difference between one Rebbe and another Rebbe. We don't really understand these things. We can only go by something that the Rebbe himself told us. When it comes to the Rebbe Marash, the Rebbe says that the Rebbe Marash is characterized by Lechatchila River, which is interesting because when you hear how much and to what extent the Rebbe associated the Rebbe Marash to Lechatchila River, you would think that he spoke about this every other day. And every time that he spoke, he probably started off by saying Lechatchila River, and he finished by saying Lechatchila River. But as far as we know, it was one incident that had happened, and he told this to somebody. But the Rebbe said that this phrase, this quote, characterizes and expresses the essence of the Rebbe Marash, to the extent that the Rebbe would refer to the Rebbe Marash by that name. Sometimes he would say, sing the song of the Lechatchila River. Today is the birthday of the Lechatchila River. Or today is the Iyar the Rebbe Marash, as if he had another name called Lechatchila River. So just briefly, what does Lechatchila River mean simply? Of course, it's Yiddish. Lechatchila is Hebrew, and a river is Yiddish. And it means, he said, his expression was the world, means that people out there in the world say, if you can't go under, you go over. Very similar in Yiddish. And I say that Lechatchila you go over, which basically means there's a certain order of how to do things. There's a certain system how to do things. And naturally you try to go through that order, that system. And sometimes it doesn't go, there's things blocking. You push to the right, you push to the left, you push to the middle, you try here, from there, and it's just not working. If it's not working to go in the normal, orderly fashion, then you go arriba. If you can't go under, you go over. In other words, just Ignore the system, transcend the system, just go above it. That's the literal meaning of the word. So the Rabbi Marash said, but my opinion is, don't try to go the ordinary way and the orderly way. And if it doesn't work, then you try to just jump over it. But melechatchila, that's how you should initially approach it. Over. The words are very abstract. What does it mean? Practical. I can definitely tell you there are hundreds and hundreds of farbrengens that were poured over these words. Farbrengens by the Rebbe, by the Frierdiker Rebbe, farbrengens of Chassidim, because it's a general principle that can be applied in many different ways. But I will just say two things of how it could be understood, and from there you can elaborate and understand more. And I'm sure Rabbi Balti will talk about more details. First of all, there's another thing known about the Rebbe Marash, and that is that he used to conduct himself in a Baal Shemska way. That's the expression. What does that mean? What was unique about the Baal Shem Tov, especially in comparison to the Rebbes of Chabad, was the Baal Shem Tov performed open miracles. He didn't hide it, he didn't camouflage it, but he was very openly tell a person, well, I know that 3 years ago, Sunday afternoon, and this place, at this hour, you did such and such. The person thinks things like that. Or he would tell people that I see that in 10 years from now, on this and this time, this is going to happen. Someone will approach you and ask you this and this, and you should answer them such and such, clearly about the future. Or he would openly say, the reason why I did this was I saw that in heaven, this and this is going on. Or people came with him with certain things, issues, and miraculously he cured them or helped them, but it was openly, clearly a miracle. There was not even any room to think otherwise. I mean, there's always room to think otherwise because David should create a Yetzer Hara. And the Yetzer Hara will always allow us to interpret things in a way that's not really the emes. Want to give this to Miriam? But just to give an example, there was once a man that he had a daughter who unfortunately was born crippled, never walked in her life. He went to doctors. He was wealthy, so he traveled. He went to big doctors, but he couldn't get any results. One day, his wife came home and she heard in the marketplace people talking about someone like the Baal Shem Tov that he performs miracles and people go to him for blessings. Why don't you go? And he said, I don't believe in this. It's nonsense. And she was begging and pleading and nagging. And it's for our daughter. Why not try if there's any hope? Finally, she convinced him to go. And he went, but he went reluctantly. And he was a wealthy person, which very often wealthy people is actually a pasuk. That wealthy people are arrogant by nature and they have chutzpah by nature. Of course, you can have a wealthy person that's very refined and not arrogant, but it takes work because the natural reaction of having a lot of money and being wealthy, it inflates a person's ego. So he came to the Baal Shem Tov. In those days, he traveled by horse and wagon. He told his daughter to sit in the wagon. Came to the Baal Shem Tov with a bag full of gold coins. And he said to the Baal Shem Tov, here, this is for you. Hail my daughter. It was sort of in an arrogant way, like, I'm giving you money, it's a business. Make her healthy. So the Baal Shem Tov took the bag and he said, I don't need your money. And he threw it out the window. And he was like a shock. There was a lot of gold coins there. And his eyes are following the bag. It falls on the floor. And all the coins scatter all over the place. The next thing he sees is his daughter, who never walked in her life, gets out of the wagon, jumps down on the floor, starts collecting the coins. He races out of the room, runs over to his daughter, grabs her by the arm and says, let's get back onto the wagon before he's going to say that this was his miracle. So, yes, you could see a miracle in front of your eyes and you can still deny it if you have a good, healthy, seasoned Yetzer Hara. He knows how to do the job. But Jenny was open miracles. The Rebbes of Chabad, and throughout the year, you've heard many stories. When they performed miracles, it was camouflage. Remember the story I told you before Pesach, that the doctors in New York are better than the doctors in France, right? So that was a way of Rebbe hiding what really happened. The Rebbe Marash was an exception amongst the Rebbes of Chabad. He performed open miracles. And he would do things in a very open way and tell people in an open way about the future, about the past, or other things like that. So they said that Rabbi Marash conducted himself in the Baal Shemska way. This is one form of Chatchila Riba. Something's wrong, you try to do the natural way. You go to a doctor, you go to the lawyer, you try to work it out with him. Things don't work. Then they'll try to do something which is look towards something supernatural. But at the beginning, you put your hope and you invest yourself in doing things in all the natural way. And Rabbi Marash said, and I go l'chatchila river, not sort of thinking, taking consideration teva, nature, or the laws of nature and the limitations of nature. Go l'chatchila above nature, which is in a miraculous way. That's one explanation. The other explanation, which applies more to us on a more personal level, is, and this is hopefully Rabbi Paltiel will talk about this more and elaborate on this more, is that when I have something in my life, especially in Avodas Hashem, a servant Hashem, that's blocking. I'm having doubts, I'm having challenges, I have certain character traits that are really very challenging, and I know it's wrong and I can't get over it. I have certain things I'm attracted to, and I can't stop myself. I can't resist the temptation for this or for that or for something else. So you're wrestling with it, you're fighting with it, especially thoughts that are disturbing thoughts, whether it's thoughts that are inappropriate or thoughts that are depressing, but they're disturbing. So normally you try everything you can to sort of fight them off. And the Chatchila River means don't fight them off. Just go above it, which means just pretend that they don't exist, ignore them, do what you have to do, and you will see that it will just disappear. Of course, this is also very general. There's a lot to talk about specifically how to deal with that, but that is what it means. And we can definitely say that this approach of the Chatchila River, even though the Rebbe is quoting the Rebbe Maharash, but it surely permeates and it surely manifests in almost everything that the Rebbe deals with, whether we talk about shlichus, whether it's about working with ourselves, with issues, with challenges. You'll see that the Rebbe's approach is always don't give any substance to something which is in your way. Don't give substance to feelings or thoughts or people that are disturbing you. Just ignore it, just move ahead, do what you have to do, and the less you think about it, the less attention you pay to it, it will have less substance. And the more you give it attention, the more substance it'll have. That's the idea of the Chatchila River. One more interesting thing I want to point out too, the sphere is Teferes Shabbat Teferes. So it's brought down in the Sichos that one of the most significant days this time of the year is Lag BaOmer. What's the sphere on Lag BaOmer? Hod Shebahod. That's the day of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. So something very interesting is that there are two opinions in Kabbalah how to count the spheres. The first day when we counted was Chesed Shebachesed. The second day was Gevura Shebachesed. What will be the last day? What's the last of the seven spheres? Malchus. And what's the last day of the 7 days? Malchus Sheba Malchus. There's another opinion that we start from Malchus. The first day is Malchus Sheba Malchus, and the last day is Chesed Sheba Chesed. We go up to the top. So the interesting thing is if you start from the first day Malchus, today would be Hod Sheba Hod, the day of Lag BaOmer. And the day of Lag BaOmer would be Teferes Sheba Teferes. In fact, one year, it was a Lag BaOmer parade. The Rebbe gave out a coin. I'm going to look for it. I tried to find it yesterday. I'll look for it today again to show you. Gave out a coin, which is unusual. On the coin, on one side of the coin, it said Lag BaOmer. On the other side of the coin, it said L'Chatchila River. The official excuse was that the Rebbe wanted it to be ready for this date, and it wasn't ready on time, so he gave it on Lag BaOmer. But clearly, the Rebbe wanted to make a connection between the two dates. And Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was also the stories about him was very similar to Baal Shem Tov's stories, open miracles. Heaven was open in his world, very open, miraculous things, open things about prophecy, about the future. So there's a strong connection between the Shum Bar Yochai and the Rebbe Marash. Okay, I don't want to talk more because then I'll take everything away from Rav Paltiel. So we'll leave him. He's going to continue on this, and maybe on a different note, but definitely it'll be about L'Chatchila Riba. So let's go back to the Mamar. Again, in the new book that we're using, the Sefer, it's page 60. If you're using the booklet that we have, it's page 6. And the chapter is Ches 8. Everything we said before about Bittul is Besitu de Kedusha, in the realm of Kedusha. Shiesham Pchinas HaBittul, Kedusha is characterized by Bittul. And the fact that there's Bittul, whose Sibas is Avdus Veskalus, that's the cause that brings things together and that things include one another. But in the Sitracha, that's the realm of Klippa. Over there, that realm is characterized by separation. And the separation comes as a result of Yeshus. That because Klippa is all about Yeshus, establishing my own self-independent identity, so every detail, every person, every klipa, every item, whatever it is, if it's in the realm of klipa, it's all about establishing my own identity, and that separates one from the other. This is the primary difference in the root of klipa, which is the spheres of the world of Tahu, that there too we see the same thing. The spheres, the Tahu, the spheres of the world of Tahu, are not emlich davka. Remember when we started this in the Mamar, I showed you what it says in the Chumash, in Parshas Vayishlach, that there were kings of Esav. Each king ruled, and then it said that he died. So he's saying, it's brought down that these kings said, I want to rule, which means Ani v'le'acher, I and no one else. In other words, Tohu means that I want to be in charge. I want to have the power. I want to be the king, and I won't allow anybody else to have any kind of power, any kind of authority, in fact, any kind of substance, because any kind of other substance, and certainly power or authority, detracts from my authority. There's less of me. Kingship itself involves yeshus and self-expression. This explains why the bittul of the spheres in the world of Tahu was only rotzu. Page 62. The loy b'bchina shuv, but not shuv. As it's explained in another place. I'm just going to say a few more words and then explain it. L'hainu kiyadua, on page 63, it's well known that the rotzu is not the expression of true bittul. Actually, it's an expression of feeling the self. The ikra bittul, the real bittul, the primary bittul, is b'bchina shuv. So this is a terminology of Chassidus, which is Ratzu v'shuv. It's a whole subject of Chassidus. Ratzu is spelled, as you see it here, Reish Tzadik Vav Aleph, and Shuv is spelled Shin Vav Beis. The literal meaning of the word, Ratzu means to run forward, and Shuv means to withdraw back, come back. Shuv, like to return. And basically, it says in Chassidus that these two words, Ratzu and Shuv, they sort of describe the rhythm of the whole creation. In the whole creation, there's a rhythm of Ratzu and Shuv. What does that mean? Hashem created a world, and he invested his godly energy in this world, in everything that exists. So whether it's angels, whether it's creation, whether it's the neshama, There's always a movement in two directions. One direction is Ratzui, one direction is Shuv. So we'll speak about it the way it is with the neshama, and then from there it's easy to understand other things as well. But I just want to say the source of this is a prophecy where he describes the chariot. I think you all know about that prophecy, but in that prophecy, he also used the term that he saw the angels running forward and backward. They're going forward and backward. And that's Ratzui V'Shuv. What does it mean? It means that a person, it says in Tanya that the person's neshama is compared to a candle. And the candle is a flame of fire. And the flame of fire is always, it's not stable. It's shaking all the time. Now the Rebbe explains what does that mean? Because the fire has a desire the fire doesn't have a conscious desire, but the nature of fire is to return to its source, which is the element, the ultimate source of all fire in the world. So fire is drawn towards its source. On the other hand, because the fire is connected to a wick, or it's connected to a piece of wood or paper or whatever it is, that holds the fire down. So if the wood or the paper or the wick is gone, then the fire is gone because it becomes included in its original source. So the motion that we see, that it's shaking, is these two movements. There's a movement where it wants to be close to the source, and there's another movement that because there's a wick, it's being held down. And that's the way it is with the neshama. On one hand, the neshama wants to be included in its source. The neshama wants to connect to Hashem. On the other hand, the neshama one knows that Hashem wants it to be in the body down here on earth. So the physical body is like the wick, the candle that's holding it down. So the neshama is constantly in these two movements of up and down. So when the neshama is davening, it's in the up mode. After davening, when the person takes off his talis and tefillin, goes out into the world to do his business, the neshama is coming down. When a person's eating, neshama is coming down. Sleeping, neshama is coming down. All the gashmizik activity is sort of coming down and settling in the body. When a person is learning or davening, doing something which is spiritual and connecting to Hashem, the neshama is going up. And we know that these two movements have to be in a way that they are balanced. There's harmony with the up and the down movement. And the way the Torah was set up, all the mitzvahs, you'll see some mitzvahs are there to generate the up mode, and some mitzvahs are to generate the down mode. So let's say a mitzvah like Yom Kippur, that's the up mode. No eating, no drinking, no involvement in gashmis, just davening and being involved in spirituality for 24 hours. That's the up mode. Shabbos, to a certain extent, is the up mode. Every yontiv is an up mode. I have to stop doing my regular work and get involved in world and get involved in spirituality. On the other hand, the fact that there's a mitzvah on Shabbos or yontiv to eat meat, to drink wine, and to be involved in this way, that's the download. There should be a balance. What happened in the world of Tohu? So by the way, like I said, this is the rhythm of everything in creation. It says in Chassidus, this is the pulse beat in the body, is the Ratzui V'Shuv, the heartbeat, the breathing, inhaling, exhaling. This is a manifestation of these two movements, going up and going out, going in and going out. What happened in the world of Tohu was that the Ratzui, the going up, was much more intense than the going down. So it went up so strong that it never came down, and that's when the vessels broke. In simple words, this is like the story that we learned about in last week's Parsha with the two sons of Aaron, that they were overcome with such love for Hashem, that they were on fire with such love for Hashem, that they were burnt by this fire, which means their neshama was so drawn to Hashem that it left their body, and the body could no longer contain them. And we know that's not what Hashem wants. No matter how strong and how powerful the up mode is, how strong you want to connect to Hashem, you still have to sort of bring yourself back down. So we also know there's a story in Gemara that there were 4 sages. The Gemara says they entered the Pardes. Pardes is a metaphoric way of saying they entered into a spiritual, Kabbalistic, mystical journey. And each one had a different end result. 3 of them, it ended not in a good way. And 1 of them, it ended in a good way. The 3 that ended in not a good way, one was Ben Azai, he died. Then there was another one, Ben Zayma, he lost his mind. Then there was another person, Elisha ben Avuya, he became an unbeliever. And the only one who sort of went in and came out and was perfect was Rabbi Akiva. And there's a lot of Hasidus on what was going on. But basically, the difference was, by them, there was a Ratzui and no Shub. They went up, there was no going back down. So they got carried away, and there was destruction. Rabbi Akiva went up, and he came back down. So in Hasidus, it says, if you look at the Gemara, it says like this, Rabbi Akiva, Nichnas b'shalom, he went in peace, and he came out in peace. And the question is asked, they all went in peace. The problem was when they came back out of the experience. When they went into the experience, they were all part of the sages. They were all okay. It's after the experience where there was a difference. What does it say about Rabbi Akiva? He went in peace, and he went out. He went in peace like everybody else. That's no different. Just should have said he came out in perfection. So Chassidus explains, how did it work with Rabbi Akiva? If a person is so overwhelmed with such love for Hashem that the neshama wants to just let go and expire, so how is it possible that what happened to them didn't happen to him? So the answer is because he knew and he understood that no matter how much love you have for Hashem, and no matter how strong the fire is burning and you want to be close to Hashem, but that's not what Hashem wants. What Hashem wants is me to be in the physical body and to be far from him, to be in the place which is called earth, and to do Torah mitzvahs here. And therefore, before he even started the experience, he went in with the understanding and with the determination that I'm not going to let go. That was his anchor, so to speak. So as a result of that, when he entered this journey, when he started the journey, he had it all right. So therefore, when he went into the journey and we got carried away, he didn't get carried away to the extent that he lost his life or lost anything else. So this is what the Mamar is saying, that when a person is overcome with love for Hashem, a desire, such a desire that I don't want to be in this world anymore, I just want to be one with Hashem. Is that bittul or is that yeshus? A desire to be one with Hashem is yeshus?
Total bittul. Well, yeah.
Whatever you say, I'm going to say the opposite. You know that, right?
Stay strong. It's because that's what you want. Hashem doesn't want that. Hashem wants you to be here.
Like you must learn Chassidus once before. On the service, like Chava says, this is total bittul. What could be more bittul than that? If a person lives his life and he does something for Hashem, that's a little bittul. He does 2 things for Hashem, that's another bittul. He goes out of his way, a bigger bittul. But if he's so connected to Hashem that his neshama is expiring, he can't get himself back to this gashmatical world, he's giving up everything. That's total bittul. So what the Mamar is saying is, no, we're making a mistake. The real bittul is when the neshama goes back and lets go of that desire and brings itself to daven, learn, and eat, and sleep, and drink, and do mitzvahs b'gashmis. Why? Because like you said, it's not chas v'shalom these people have yeshus. These were great tzaddikim. So we're talking about something on a very high, subtle level. They were satisfying their thirst for Hashem. So there is the feeling of me involved. The person who gives up this unconditional love, an unconditional fire that's burning, and gives that up to do what Hashem wants, was to eat matzah on Pesach in this physical world. That's the greatest bittul, because I'm even giving up my sort of spiritual pleasure for what Hashem wants. So the real bittul is in the shuv, not in the ratzah. In the ratzah, I'm connecting to Hashem, but I'm doing what I want. In the shuv, it's exclusively what Hashem wants.
That sounds like avoid tzaddikim. Like us naturally, we didn't have like that desire, like
Right.
we don't feel
What I describe is definitely Avodah Tzadikim.
yeah.
But you can the same principle can apply to all of us on a smaller scale. Like take for example, I have time. I can either use this time to learn, or I can use myself and learn with my children and spend all my time growing spiritually myself and my children. Or I'll say I'll take the time to go out there and find a yid who knows nothing about Yiddishkeit and do shlichus. So there are many people, when you tell them about that, this is a true story, but someone told me that he once spoke to a chassid from another group. And basically Chassidim, there are different kinds of Chassidim, and there are actually some that are involved today in outreach. But for the most part, they're more involved in their own community, learning and davening, making sure their kids are doing everything right. And that's where they're focused. And they're not into shlichus, not into outreach, definitely not into traveling like a Chabad chassid to a far away, remote place where nobody is there and just set up a tent and start spreading Yiddishkeit. So this guy said, he told this Lubavitch chassid, I'm very impressed with these guys who are shlichus. He said, if my Rebbe would tell me to go to, who knows, to the Far East, to India, I would tell him, after you. You go first and I'll follow you. Who's going to go away so far out there? What am I going to do there? So, and it makes perfect sense. If you love Yiddishkeit, you want to be in an environment where you're surrounded with Yiddishkeit for yourself, for your spouse, for your children. There's a yeshiva and not give all that up to teach someone else Torah. So when I'm giving that up, I'm giving up something of real substance, not giving up money. It's not giving up just pleasure. It's not giving up convenience. It's giving up what's most precious to me, which is my spirituality. I'm giving all that up. But if this is what Hashem wants, I'm ready to give that up too. There was once a chassid of the Rebbe Rashab, whose name was Reb Chanya Morozov. There's a family here in Crown Heights. I know a lot of family, but the last name Morozov, they're all descendants of this chassid. And he was actually, in the times of the Rebbe Rashab called him in and said, I want you to become my secretary. There's an old saying by Chassidim that a secretary can't be a real chassid. Why? Because you're dealing with the Rebbe on a constant basis, you become so familiar and so close that when you're physically not distant, it's hard for you to see spiritually the distance between you and the Rebbe. And that's why there are a lot of halachas about a king, for example, or someone else that was supposed to be respecting him and having awe for him, that you have to keep at a certain distance. Because if you don't, then the physical closeness can take away from recognizing and not seeing the spiritual distance and the spiritual awe that you're supposed to have for them. So this chassid said to the Rabbi Rashab, I'm not sure exact the wording, but the content was like, a secretary can't be a chassid, doesn't want to. And the Rabbi said to him, well, being that I want you to do it, you'll give that up also. In other words, he doesn't want to become a secretary because he doesn't want to lose his identity as a chassid. But if you're out there to do what the Rebbe wants you to do, you'll give that up also. That's what he wants you to do. If you're a real chassid, you'll give it up. So basically, a yid wants ruchnis, wants to daven, wants to learn, wants to grow. And if I'm going out on shlichus, which is I'm giving all that up, my personal growth, in order to spread Yiddishkeit to someone else, that is shuv. And the person who is going to immerse himself in learning and davening all day long, that's rotzeh. The truth is, we also need to know the balance. No matter who you are and where you are, you have to learn yourself, you have to daven yourself, you have to teach your children. But primarily, you're involved in rotzeh, in shuv. So that's what he's saying with the spheres of Tohu. The spheres of Tohu were not a bad thing. Remember, Tohu is a holy world. It's higher than Atzilus. So the love for Hashem and being drawn to Hashem was almost like you would say infinite. But it was so strong that it didn't have shuv, which means it wasn't the ultimate bittul. It was as if to say more about itself. It's satisfying its own desire to become one with Hashem. When Hashem created the world of Atzilus, which is shuv, that's the ultimate bittul. because it's doing what Hashem wants. That's overriding what I want. Is it clear? So once we understand that in the world of Tohu, there was a strong sense of self, that sense of self is also what created and developed the sense of separateness. Because once there's self, Chesed is self, and Gvura is self, and Tiferes is self, each sphere is separate from the other, and there's no inclusion. So if you remember the first class, when we spoke about this, I said there are a lot of reasons given why there was the shattering of the vessels in the world of Tohu. But if you know the subject well, you'll see that all the reasons are interconnected. Here's one example. One reason is going to be because the spheres were separate from one another. Another reason is going to be that the spheres in Tohu had so much bittul to Hashem that the vessels shattered. They're both connected. That the spheres of Tohu were so drawn to Hashem that the light of the world detached from the vessel. But that is a subtle form of Yeshus. And that Yeshus caused the separation. So the two explanations are really connected. Okay, so this is what these words mean. Let's look inside again. I'm looking at page 63. Kidu, it's known, Shebchinas Ratzui, the expression of connection to Hashem through Ratzui, where you're drawn to Hashem, Einay Bittul Amiti. It's not the ultimate Bittul. Kim Hergish Atzmei, there's a feeling of self. It's about satisfying and giving myself the pleasure of connecting to Hashem. Ikra Bittul, the true Bittul is B'chinas Shuv, in the mode and the movement of returning, because that's fulfilling Hashem's will. The spheres of Torah didn't have the expression of Shuv, it only had Ratzui, because it was more about self. And therefore, they were anfamispadan, they were like separate branches, that they didn't interrelate one with another because of the Yeshus. And of course, all this is happening in the world of Torah on a higher spiritual plane. But from this, it evolves down here in the way we know it down here as Klippa, which is separation and contention and fighting and arguing and so on. I think we'll stop here to be continued tomorrow. Okay.